Welcome to Interviews with Innocence, a podcast about spirituality, consciousness, and exploring the wisdom our children bring into this world. I believe that our very young children are our greatest teachers. After all, they're the masters of living in the present moment, bubbling in unconditional love, enjoying the messiness of life, and curious about the universe in all its dimensions. The pure essence that young children exhibit lives within all of us. My hope is that these interviews will help us discover, embrace, and connect with the sacred core of childhood that resides within each of our hearts. I am your host, Marla Hughes. Today, I am honored, truly honored, to have David Ditchfield on the show. David is an artist, composer, and author. In 2006, he was dragged under a speeding train in a freak accident. As the surgeons fought to save him, he had a profound near-death experience. He later realized that he had acquired astonishing new abilities. The first, an ability to create dramatic paintings of what he'd seen in the afterlife. The second, the ability to compose classical music despite being unable to read or write any musical notation. His debut symphony premiered at a sellout orchestral concert to a standing ovation. He has since composed further classical works and premiered at sellout performances and continues to paint and compose in Cambridge, UK. His new book, I think it's new, pretty new, isn't it? When did your book come out?
Well, it came out last year. It came out in 2020. Okay. So yeah, but it still feels fresh to me.
His new book, Shine On, tells his remarkable story. And it is, I just finished it a few days ago. And I suggest to all of my listeners to run out and get it, because it's a beautiful, beautiful story. So welcome to the program, David.
Thank you, Marla. Thanks for having me along.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so great to have you here. And I have never done this before, but I played a little bit of your music before this interview started. So we'll see if it works. So some people can listen to it before I did your introduction. So gosh, let's just jump right in. And you have such a tragic turning into beautiful story. But before you tell us about your near-death experience, what was your life like before your NDE? And did you paint or play music or do anything like that?
Well, it was far from that, actually. Yeah, I was living in London before my accident, and I'd been there for quite some time. I'd moved down there after leaving school with very little qualifications. And so I kind of hoped that, moving to London would be the land of hope and dreams, and it would all open up for me. I mean, which it did to an extent. I enjoyed myself there. I had a great time. I loved London. It was a great buzz, like all capital cities. But there's always a drawback with all capital cities, and that is it's very hard to survive. Financially, it's really expensive. And not only that, I was meeting and hanging out with a lot of people who were successful. They've made something of their lives, and I just wanted to be part of that, but could never really get into that sort of where most of them were working in the music industry, as it were. And I just and I thought, how do you get in there? You're not highly qualified, but you're doing well for yourself. And I just didn't know how to do life, how to get the car, how to get the house, and all those things that they had. And it wasn't like I was it wasn't like a sort of envy thing, like I just kind of felt that I needed my life to move forward, but it wasn't moving forward. I was basically working on construction sites, picking up work day to day, doing manual laboring and that kind of thing, and washing up in kitchens in restaurants and stuff. So it wasn't easy. So that was my life just before the accident. Yeah.
Right. And I remember reading in your book about, well, first of all, were you religious or spiritual at all before the accident?
I wasn't actually, no. I figured that's a lot to do with the fact that when I was younger, my parents are Christian, and they used to take us to church as a family when I was young, and I just didn't feel comfortable in there. I wasn't an atheist, but I just wasn't, comfortable. And my parents, they were very liberal, my parents, and said, okay, you can stay at home. You don't have to come in. So I kind of like, religion was a sort of like, I just thought, no, I've tried that when I was younger and it didn't appeal to me. But it was after the near-death experience, obviously, that was all to change. I became, and still am, very spiritual, and my faith is very strong to me now.
Yeah. Wow. So I know before your near-death experience, somehow you ended up going to a spiritualist church.
I know.
Can you tell us, which is probably totally out of nature for, because I have a feeling I grew up very much like you. So what happened there before we dive into the experience?
Yeah, sure. Well, I was going to say it's by coincidence, but there's no such thing as coincidence in my books anyway. It happened for a reason. But I was on the train coming from London to visit my sister and her family, and there was an elderly couple sat opposite me, and they started asking questions about where the next station was, where St Ives was, and stuff there. And so I got chatting and told them which stop to get off at. And then the ladies turned around and said, oh, we're going to see a medium tonight. And she's very good. She was very, enthusiastic about this person. She said she's totally unknown, but she's great. And I said, okay. I was not interested at all, to be honest with you. I just wanted to get there, but she insisted on giving me this flyer. And so I said, okay. So I put it in my pocket. And when I arrived at my sister's, it was all pretty chaotic. The kids were all running around. And I just thought, I'm going to go and take a drink at the local pub and have a beer, and chill out. And I opened this flyer up and I thought, do you know what? I'm going to go. I decided I'm going to go to this meeting. So I went along, and it was a small church called the St Ives Spiritualist Church. And I walked in and it was packed. And I found myself a seat, sat down, and she was brilliant. She's called Julia Knight, and she was just pacing backwards and forwards, very animated, and picking people out and saying, I'm picking up, all these different things that were, and a lady would turn and say, yes, that's my father, or that's my husband, or whatever, and that all loved ones that had passed were coming through. And I thought, this is really fascinating. So it was more like a show than anything, and I was not looking to be picked out, but I was. She suddenly turned around and she said, man in the blue sweater over there, your life is about to change. And I went, oh, okay. And I thought, what is this, the lottery, and am I going to find the girl that I'm chasing at the moment for a relationship? And then she said, no. And I said, what is it? And she was talking to them like this. She had a hand on her head. She was going, yes, I know. And then she turned around to me. She said, they're telling me it's going to be very big, and it's going to be, but you'll be protected, and but be ready for it. So I said, great, I will. And of course, looking back on it now, what they were talking about was that this whole thing that was going to unfold for me was just like a huge accident and then a near-death experience, which would completely change my life. So that's what the message was that was being
Wow.
sent to me at that point. Yeah.
And I remember reading that before your accident, that there's maybe something happened with the girl, and you would think, well, is this
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
So
Interesting.
anyway, tell us about what happened, a little bit about the accident, and
Sure.
then your experience of your near-death experience.
Yeah. Well, the accident happened when I was in Cambridge, and I'd gone back up for another long weekend. I was broke. I was down to my last £10,
Mhm.
and I was very depressed. Anyway, so I was staying at my sister's, and I'd met somebody who I'd got to know just before going up, and we connected, and we kept in touch by phone. And she's called Anna, and she came to stay for a few days, and I had to see her off at the station. She'd got to get back to London, and it was a cold February day, and I got a sheepskin coat on. I remember, like 3/4 length, and I helped her with the bags onto the train, and then the automatic doors closed basically, and my coat got trapped at the bottom part, and I couldn't pull it free. And there was no guard on the platform or anything. There was nobody around to help me. And so I just figured at this point, as the engine started to rev, I thought, this is it. I'm going to die. I just thought I was staring death in the face. The train started to pull out at great speed, and I lost my footing. It's amazing how fast these trains pull out. You don't think about it when you go and you sit down and you get your cell phone out and start typing away. But when you're attached to the outside, it's very, very dramatic and frightening. And then I lost my footing, and then I got pulled between the edge of the platform and the speeding train, and then under I went. And it was like being pulled into, like the jaws of dark hell, and I was just thrown around relentlessly like a rag doll. And it was just, I suddenly felt like it was me, flesh and bones, against this huge mechanical beast. And yeah, I went into fight or flight mode, as they call it, and I was determined to fight. And so something larger and bigger than me and all of us saved me that day. So there I was, um, lying down in the middle of the tracks while the train was still speeding on at great speed, and then it kind of disappeared off eventually down the track. So to roll forward, the emergency guys got me into the ambulance and got me into hospital. And when I got there, I was in the ER department, the emergency department, and they were like sort of, these guys were like sort of desperately trying to save my life. I was losing copious amounts of blood, and my family had arrived as well. They were there pretty quick, and it was at that point that I left my body. And I left all this chaos and all this pain and agony that I was in, and I suddenly found myself being elevated, I guess, into a beautiful realm, and this realm that I was in was like it was so dark and peaceful, and all the pain had gone, and I looked around, and there was like these orbs of color that were slowly pulsating all around me, like yellows and oranges and reds, and I just felt comforted by these orbs. And I looked around to get my bearings, and I realized I was laid out on this big slate rock. It was like a big medieval altar, is the way I often describe it. And I looked down to check my body, and everything was intact. I was no longer clothed, but there was no scars or my left arm had been severed in the accident, but everything was all back in place, not even a single scratch. And I was just covered in this blue cloth, and it was like a satin sort of silky material. And there was like white light that was just kind of reflecting off this cloth. And I just kind of thought, wow, this is amazing. And I just lay back onto the rock. And when I did, I looked up, and there were like 3 grids of white light that were slowly closing in on me. And I looked into that light, because the energy that was coming from that light was just so pure, and it just felt like it was when I say the energy was coming from it, I felt energy coming from it, and it wasn't just light; it was just more than that. And this was beautiful. So I just kind of lay there and bathed in this kind of in this warmth, this energy. And then eventually I started to sense that there was somebody there. You know, you got that sensation somebody had entered the scene. So I lifted my head, and there was a beautiful being stood at my feet, an androgynous person with sort of pure white, sort of blonde hair, and the skin that was radiating light from within, and wearing just a simple black t-shirt, just like I'm wearing now, a very contemporary black t-shirt, and with this face expression that was just kind of smiling at me. And I knew this person. It was like a knowing smile, and I was going, "Who are you? I know you, don't I?" You know, and this person wasn't giving too much away, but just kept grinning back at me. But I felt, you know, this was like my guardian. This was like this person was guarding me, you know, and I was safe now. I figured really at this point that this was it, that I had died, that I passed over, and I didn't fight it or resist it. I know that some people I've since heard do try to resist it, and because they've got so much to live for, their families and stuff like that. But I guess I had just been through so much hell that it was just wonderful just to be in this beautiful realm, and I just felt safe there. I suddenly got the sensation that there were more people had arrived at the scene, and I was right. I opened my eyes again, and there were two female forms either side of me, and they were stood there, and they got their hands just slowly hovering over my body, and then they were just kind of like healing, I guess, not only all the physical trauma that I'd just been through in that accident, but it felt deeper than that. It felt like they were basically pulling off the layers of oppression and hurt or whatever that we all take with us through our lives, you know, and all those layers were being taken off, and I just felt like they were healing my soul, you know, and it was just the pure essence of my soul that was being healed, and it was a beautiful sensation, you know, and it felt like there was just so much love surrounding me now, and that was coming through both their hands and from the light and from the person that was first greeted me, that it was just like, it was like a sensation of all the different types of love that I'd had in my life, whether it had been through my mother, father, you know, brother, sister, or even my pet cat, you know, but all my lovers, you know, but it was all those different types, all encompassed into one and just kind of coming through. And it was unconditional as well. It was just very, very lovely. So in fact, I started to think about my family as I felt all this love coming through, and I thought they're going to be pretty upset now because clearly I'm dead, you know. And so I thought I'd look over the edge of this rock and see if I could see them in the hospital, and I didn't see them at all. But what I did see as I peered over the edge was this amazing, beautiful sight. It was like a huge waterfall of stars. You know, it was like something as huge and vast as Niagara, for example, you know, one of all those great waterfalls in the world. But instead of tons of water spilling over the edge, there were like millions of stars cascading. And I thought, wow, this is incredible. I thought, I'm in the universe itself now. I'm not actually in a small darkened space that I first felt I was in, you know. And I looked down, I just peered down into this waterfall. And as my gaze kind of like sort of kept sort of adjusting to how far I was looking down, I was looking from one galaxy into another. And I could see, it was like looking into this infinite, beautiful sort of universe. And, you know, I could see nebulas and colors and all these different forms that were coming together. It was just a tremendous feeling to be feeling part of the universe, if you like. And then I pulled over, and I thought it's interesting because I didn't feel any sense of like, oh my goodness, you know, my family, I can't see them. I felt, okay, they'll be all right. They will get through this, and then they'll be coming over here at some point, and they'll be feeling all the wonders that I am now. So I lay back, and as I was lying there feeling, all this healing that continued to go on. Um, the most profound moment was about to happen, and that was like I could feel this energy of love was suddenly intensified, and it was getting stronger. And I thought, what's going on? It's like I looked up, and there was this tunnel of white light that was just coming in towards me, and it was just getting. It was there. It was like huge. It was like, whoa, wow, and it was like surrounded by all these flames that were slowly circulating around the edge of this white light. And I thought, my goodness, this is amazing. It was quite frightening to look at, but I wasn't at all in fear, because in that realm, you don't feel any of those sensations. All I could feel was excitement. And I felt, as I looked into this light, the energy coming from it was causing every single molecule of my body to vibrate with this energy. It was just like tremendous. And I knew at this point that what I was looking at here was the source of all creation. This was God. This was not the image of God that I expected him to look like. Or I say him because that's normally how God is portrayed, as a man, with a beard. But no, God is, for me, was this huge white tunnel. And so with that knowledge, and I kind of laid back and laughed to myself, because it was just such an incredible, profound, and beautiful moment, that I came crashing back into my body, and I was back in the hospital. The pain came rushing through. The drama of the hospital was just like it was overkill. The sound, the noise, the lights. It's like, oh. So yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. So when you were there, were you still like totally you? And also, I mean, this happened 15 years ago. Is it, and you're still telling the story so vividly. So can you just talk about those two things?
Sure. Yeah. Um, well, yes, it was most certainly me. There was a sensation that it was me in this realm, but it felt like a different sort of me as well. I hadn't before that. I was spending so much time worrying about the past and all past mistakes I'd made and all opportunities I'd missed, or I was worried about the future, about where, especially because I was down to my last £10, where it's going to go, how am I going to pay my debts, and where am I going to go with my life? And I was never in the present moment. Whereas in this realm, I was in the present moment, and I didn't care about the past anymore or the future. So, for the first time, all the anxieties that I carried with me had gone. And it's a beautiful feeling to feel like that. And it, it's also, you asked me, what people say to me, was it, how can you sort of differentiate it from a dream state or hallucination or whatever? And it's not hallucinogenic. I mean, that's why, as you say, I'm talking about it as clear now as I did then, because it's never gone. It's like I describe it as being ultra real. It's like it's as real as you and I are sat here talking, but it's just like it's got this different dimension that is just so strong and powerful. And so you never forget it. And of course, when I first came back from it, even though I was, in the hospital and in the pain and everything, I was just so full of excitement. And I thought, wow, what just happened there? And what's my mission? Why have they sent me back? Where do I go from here? What am I supposed to be doing? And yeah.
Wow. Well, I'd like to read a quote from your book that just really touched me about your experience. And you said, but what I see is totally unexpected, and it is not my old world at all. It is a cascading waterfall of galaxies before me. No entire universes, no whole dimensions, billions of tiny stars forever falling from the outer horizon of a huge circular waterfall, all traveling in the same direction, downwards, ever downwards, into an infinite spiral at its heart. It is so much more breathtaking and unimaginable than any of the two-dimensional images of the universe I saw in books or films when I was alive. Wow. I mean, that is that it's so many times it's so ineffable to be able to tell, this world about your experience, but you've done such a beautiful job. And you must be kind of
Thank you.
surprised when you hear yourself talk like this too.
Yes. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. It's
I mean, being not spiritual or religious, and then, wow, just
well, not
beautiful.
just that, I'm also dyslexic, so I never actually thought I would actually be able to write a book. I had the
Right.
help of a co-writer that made that all happen. I would not have been able to do it otherwise. But even so, it's all this
Fascinating.
stuff comes out because when I realized afterwards, with all, like the same with all my artwork and my music, it's not just me who's actually creating all this stuff. I'm getting help from somewhere else. I'm channeling energy and ideas through to be able to articulate all this to get my story across. And so it's not all me, but it still surprises me. It does. I mean, just when I've been working on a new piece of music. In fact, today I was doing some work, and some melodies came through, and I still sit back and go, "Wow, that's really lovely. That's really beautiful." And it's
Right.
because I know that I'm just being helped. It's a wonderful feeling when you get that.
Well, it's, I interviewed Tony Sikoria, and he had said the
Ah,
same thing. And he mentioned that, all the greats, Mozart and many more, have said that the music comes from God, or whatever you want to call it,
oh,
comes from the
yeah,
light. It just flows in.
yeah.
And that's exactly what you're saying. So just wanted one more quick question about that. Were you told, so you weren't given a choice to come back, but were
No,
you told that, did you feel like you had more to do on this earth, or was that just not part of the experience?
yeah. I felt straight away that I got more to do. I
Yeah.
felt like I was got a mission to sort of to follow through, and I couldn't wait to get out there and do something. It's even though I was in hospital and obviously my body was in a bad way. I mean, I was in there. I was like, I was I got wires and tubes coming at me, and I could hardly move. But inside, I was this burning energy. I just couldn't wait to start, painting. I wanted to do painting first of all. I thought I'm going to paint what I'd seen, and I wanted to do like a huge, like, these old Italian Renaissance paintings, all the biblical scenes that are really dramatic. I wanted to do something like that just to get the story across. And I'd never done anything like that at all, but it
Yeah.
didn't matter. I had to do it, and so I followed that through. So yeah, it's interesting how I got so much. I didn't know what my mission was. I kept trying to find it. I thought, what is it? First of all, I thought I was going to be a carer, And once I was able to start walking, and they put me on a ward, and I was getting around the ward, I was trying to care for people who were in hospital who were traumatized by what had happened to them, with their own stories. But I realized that wasn't what it was supposed to be. I wasn't actually supposed to be like a first on care, if you like. I
Right.
realized that my mission was to sort of tell my story through all different mediums and different dimensions, through music and art, and now through the book and talking about it, and people reading it. So it's interesting to see that all these, it feels like it's got it's all kind of like a circular dimension now, the way I relate my story, as it were. Yeah.
Right. David, had you even heard of an NDE when this happened to you?
No, not at all. But I mean, interestingly enough, when I woke up in hospital after they wheeled me into surgery, and I was there for about 8 hours, and I remember coming through, and I just remember thinking, I was in this. They'd given me a room on my own. I was just sat there with this little machine bleeping away, and I was just going, "What just happened?" And I was so scared. I thought. I thought I was scared I was going to forget it all, and I thought I've got to
Right.
tell the whole world about this. That there is an afterlife, and not to fear death. So that's from the off. I felt like that, and it wasn't until I got out of hospital that I started going online to look at it, to see what I could find. And in fact, Dr. Raymond Moody was the first person I came across, and I'd never even heard of him. And
Hmm.
I just saw him, and I wrote an email to him, and I said what had happened to me, and I sent my first painting to him, and he got back like within a couple of days, which is unheard of because I didn't know just how huge he was,
Right,
And so
right.
synchronicity, he just opened that email up and said, "Yeah, this is a really great painting. This is like that's a lovely depiction of your experience." It was a very short couple of lines, nothing too big, but that was and then it was. I went back to that church actually, the Spiritualist church, where the meet. And I couldn't remember where it was, and I kept trying to find it, and because it was in a small Victorian alleyway that led to the river. And I used to go there with my sister, walking to the river each day when I was recovering. And then I found it. It was one Sunday afternoon. I said, "That's it's a doorway. There it is, And people were going in. There was a service, so I went in. And of course, as soon as I walked in there, we had coffees afterwards, and they knew who I was because I've been all over the news and stuff. They came over and they explained you had a near-death experience, and I
Right.
went, "Oh, okay." So they were really helpful.
Wow. So the painting, let's talk about that just a little bit more. And then I know your friend the celloist, then you got
Mm.
involved with the music. So it sounds like you just had this burning desire to paint. And how did that, I remember reading in your book about, you said to, I think your sister Janet, that, you know, I think I'm supposed to do a painting to show them. That's why I need this stuff. You're asking for an easel and this and
That's it.
that.
Yeah.
And also your beautiful family that your father and your mother saw something different in you. And I
They
think that's
did.
where the title of your book came. Is that correct? Like they said you were shining or
They
something?
did say that. They did say that
Yeah.
to me because it took me about a week to tell them what had happened. Because as
Right.
I said earlier, they're both Christians, and I thought it might sort of jar with their faith, and I
Right.
thought I didn't, but it was important for me for them to get it. And so when the time came for me to tell them, I told them the whole story, and they sat there and listened, and they didn't move. And then after I finished, my mum turned around and she said, "We know." And I said, "How do you know, mum?" And she said, "Well, we every time we come in here, your father and I leave, and we always say, he's just glowing. He's just glowing with all this energy and light, and he's giving out all this love and care to people around him, either people who've come to visit or even the nurses." And so they spotted that. I mean, that's a mother's instinct, that she obviously
Yes.
saw that. So that was really lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so great you were able to share with this loving family and they
Yes,
listened and they validated and they thought it was beautiful.
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's absolutely
So the
true. Yeah.
painting, so you started doing the paintings and then how did you start getting those out to the world? And then how did that transition into your your amazing music?
Well, and one thing I started to notice was there was a lot of synchronicity started to go on in my life. I felt like that I was being helped from this other realm in many ways. They helped me to sort of meet the people who would cross my path. Who would help me. I mean, I started off like I didn't know I was going to do this painting. I was staying at my sister's. I was recovering there, and a friend of theirs came around who her and her husband owned like a gym, like a sort of a Pilates yoga center,
Right.
and they said, "Look, we've got a studio space that's going for a week because we're doing renovations. You use that and do your painting there." Thinking I'll get it all done in a week. I said, "Okay." So I started. That was the very first one, and of course, I was nowhere near finished. But they turned around and said, "Look, it's okay. You can stay. We'll move around you. We'll have classes, but we'll move you into another room." And I ended up staying there for 2 years with free of charge. And
Wow.
that was I know they're really good friends now, but they were amazing because they just loved having me there. They used to call me the artist in the attic, and people used to come in and say, "Who is this guy?" And they'd all come up. People would be coming up before they go to their classes. So that's when I met the cellist. She was coming to the Pilates classes, and we got chatting. She loved my paintings, and people would ask what they were about, and of course I'd say, and I realized then that people were fascinated to hear about the story from all walks of life. Um, so yeah, so that's how the paintings all started. But the music itself that came interestingly enough through I was having spiritual healing, and this was at the Spiritualist church, and because that helped me a lot with my recovery,
Right.
both physically, but also mentally and emotionally, because I was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder from the accident, and so it helped me with that. And some of these healers were clairvoyant, and they would give me messages at the end of, when they just finished healing me, very short ones. And they started saying that a succession of them would be saying things like, I'm seeing a violin laid across your chest, or I'm hearing Beethoven and Wagner and things. And I thought, I don't know what you're talking about. Then one of them said, they're telling me that you're going to write a piece of music about your experience. So I thought, right, I'm going to go home and do that. So I got this little old cheap synthesizer out there at the loft, and I just got that on a tape recorder, a little cassette recorder, and I just started. I thought it was going to be a song, and I was going to call it Shine On, and I was trying to write this song, and these lyrics came through, but it just wasn't really coming together. And then it started to develop, and I thought, this is feeling more like it should be played by an orchestra. So I told my friend, the cellist, this when we were having coffee, and she said maybe we could perform it, in the orchestra. So I thought, yeah, why not? So I got all this crazy sort of like sense of ambition, as like nothing's going to stop me. So I kept writing, and then my brother helped me. He was living in London, and he said, look, I've got this piece of software that you can have, and you'll attach it to your computer, and I'll get you a new keyboard, and when you play on this keyboard, it will then transpose the notes you're playing into musical format, So that's how I did it, and then just printed off all the parts. And then I met for coffee, and I said, what do you think of this? Would you think you would play it? And she said, this is great. And then she got the rest of the orchestra involved, and they said, yeah, we'll do it. So so that was pretty awesome,
And now you're playing to sold out audiences, and
that's right.
Just for the listeners, you can go on SoundCloud, David Ditchfield, and this will all be in the show notes, but to listen to some of your music, and also Google your beautiful paintings, because they're just amazing. And then there's your book. So
That's right,
how did that come about?
Again, synchronicity. As I said, I'd wanted to write it. In fact, all these different mediums at the church kept coming from all over the country I'd never met before, and they were going, gentlemen over there, you've got to start writing. They're telling me to write. You've got to write your story. And I thought, I wish. And then a beautiful friend of mine I'd known from years back, sort of had moved down from Scotland, and then we got chatting, and she said, when are you going to write your story? And I said, well, I can't, can I? How am I going to write a book? And then she said, well, I'll do it with you. How about that? I said, great. So that's how that started. And so we finished it off, and we didn't know where it was going to go. But again, I was being guided and helped.
Yeah.
I said, I explained to her that scenario as well. I said, look, just have faith, it will come, because we tried a few publishers and we were getting the usual, turned down and what have you, and it's not right for us. But I knew that we got something special here. And then suddenly, just before Christmas, I just got an email through of this guy, and he'd been handed the manuscript from someone else who turned us down, because they turned us down because it just wasn't their stuff, they put out. But she thought it was good, and this guy said, "Look, I think it's a great story. This, and can I take it to my team, my publishers?" I said, "Yeah, great." And then so they, straight after Christmas, they offered a publishing deal, and then that was it. And then I contacted Dr. Moody again, just to ask if he would read it, and I never heard back for like sort of about 3 or 4 months or whatever, and then suddenly his manager got a hold of me and said, I've just looked at your website that you sent Raymond Moody, and your story, it's amazing, he's going to love this. He said, I'm sorry he never got back, but he's obviously so inundated, that he just doesn't look through them all, but I'm going to make sure he reads this. And so he read it and he loved it. And then she got back and said that he wants to write an acknowledgement for the book. And I said, oh, that's fantastic, And then later the same day, she got back with another email that bounced back to me and said, actually, he's just turned around and said he will write the foreword for it because he just really believes in this. So that was lovely, So all that kind of energy, it made, kind of helped elevate the whole thing to sort of come together. And then there it was. And it came out at the start of the pandemic. and I didn't know how that was going to affect it. I thought, is it, but I still didn't lose faith. I thought, okay, it could sink without trace, but it doesn't matter if it does. It's still, I'm really proud of it. But it didn't. It went the opposite way, actually. The pandemic actually helped me, because it meant that I could do interviews with people like yourself from all different corners of the world, just via Zoom, and
Right.
which was fantastic. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So, David, I know life hasn't been all roses since your experience by any means. You talk about but it is very, I've interviewed a lot of near-death experiencers, and it takes a long time to process all of this. But what is your life like now in terms of David before and David now, in terms of people, relationships, purpose in life, that sort of thing?
Yeah. The one thing that I learned, that I talked about earlier, was that when I was in that realm, that all my anxiety issues are dispersed, as I said, and I'd forgotten about the past and worrying about the future. And I realized that that's very important to do in this life, in this everyday life. When things go wrong, obviously you're faced with adversities, but each time I remind myself of that moment, and I think, no, stop, be in the moments like I was there, and stop concerning yourself by creating a story that you think is going to happen, that could all go wrong. And because you always do. So if you just got a letter through the post that says, oh, you're about to be evicted from your apartment or whatever, you just see the worst scenario, and you
Yes.
build the story around it. Whereas I learned not to do that. I learned to stop there and say, well, hang on a sec, I'm okay. I'm looking around me and I'm feeling all right. I'm happy where I am now. And something will come. We will work this out, and what have you. And so I'm a lot more grounded in that sense, I guess. But what I'm learning is that my guides work with me all the time, and we've all got guides that are working with us all the time. But it's a question of just stopping to try and communicate with them and connect with them as much as you can. And they're there to help you. So my life's changed from that point of view. That it's lovely to know that they are there and that they want to help. And that we're all part of the universe as well. That's another big thing, because I never felt that before. I never had any faith. My life was linear. Anything that went wrong, I just wanted to try and skim over the surface of any adversity, but whereas now I just realize that all adversity happens for a reason, and normally, something new comes out of it. Well, every time something new comes out of it. And so it's that when you read that part from my book there, talking about the waterfall of stars, that was a profound moment, because that's when I realized that we all are part of this universe, and the universe is constantly moving forward, as Einstein said, and also he said that light is the source of all creation, and I just think that's it. We are part of this universe, and the universe wants us to keep creating. If you think about it, like all the whole animal kingdom, the nature, all the seasons changing, and they're all led by the universe, and that universe is giving this rebirth and creation. And I guess as a human race, we're moving further and further away from that, because our brains are so wired to sort of being, living in our societies. So I try to get in touch with nature as much as I can, because I think that's really important that we all do. Yeah.
So important. I can't agree more. Well, David, thank you so much. This has just been wonderful. And is there anything that you would like to shout to the world? Or I think you just kind of did that, but say to the world, or have we pretty much?
Yeah. Well, I guess it'd be nice to sort of finish off by saying that the one thing that I never realized before is that we are all loved as well. That we are really loved, and if you stop to accept that, you start to find self-love and that's important as well. And then once you find self-love, then you find self-worth, and then you'll find that, you know, the synchronicity I talked about earlier happens in your life, and that, you know, doors will slowly open for you that are the right ones, you know, the ones that belong to your authentic self.
Right. Well, you're such a light to the world, and thank you for all that you do. And what happened? What are you going to do? Just not just, but keep writing music and painting, and oh my gosh, you have so much to offer.
Well, I don't plan, actually, and I think that's really important for me
That's
not to do that. You know,
nice.
there's no plan. I just let things evolve. I am actually working on a piece of music at the moment, so that the music is very big for me at the moment. So a new symphony. So I'm excited about that, and that feels really good. So who knows? Let's see what comes next.
Well, I can't wait. Can't wait to listen. So if people want to find you and your beautiful work, how would they do that?
Yeah, I think the best thing is to go to my website, which is called shineonthestory.com. And if you go to the website, you can stream the first symphony for free. You can hear all three movements on there, and you can see some of my paintings are on there. And then you can get the links to my social media. If you use social media and you want to follow me, please, I've got a YouTube channel or Instagram, Facebook, and then you can, see what's happening next, see what's going to come next. As I say, there's no plan, but, I do hope that things will keep evolving and there'll be new things happening. Yeah.
Oh, I have no doubt. And all of that will also, all of your different links and websites will also be in the show notes. So.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you so, so much. Can't wait for the next piece of music. I just love it for meditation and just walking. I'm in Colorado right now, and the leaves are changing, and it's raining right now, and it's so beautiful just to go out and walk with my dogs and listen to your music.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It's like really
Fantastic.
magical. So thank you for that. Well, thank you so much, and you have a wonderful day. Okay.
And you too. Thanks, Marla.
Okay. Thank you, David. Thank you so much for listening in today. If you want to learn more about the show, you can find us at interviewswithinnocence.com and on Facebook or Instagram at Interviews with Innocence. Please write me a message. Tell me what you liked and let me know what else you would like to hear. I would love to hear from you. And if you liked what you heard, please leave us an iTunes rating and review. It helps other listeners find the show. Thank you.